Welcome to my talk about Theia RCP, which stands for Rich Client Platform. Thank you. So what's this talk about? In the past, many in-house applications were built on Eclipse RCP, Rich Client Platform, and there is now a pressure to modernize these applications because the platform is really old now. And what are the options for these things? And the question I want to answer is if Theia is a good choice for you. So what's Eclipse RCP? It's basically a pared-down version of the Eclipse IDE, and it's a mature application framework for the desktop based on Java. Brings its own widget library, SWT, and it has a lot of application services like context-dependent actions or views and perspectives. You can handle preferences, user preferences, different scopes, etc. There's a dependency injection framework as well. And it's runtime extensible through plugins, which also means you can have different applications or different configurations of the same application just by including different plugins. All right, so here's an example of an Eclipse RCP application. You can see there's like tons of views and the toolbar, and there's a bunch of editors in the middle, and very standard if you're familiar with the kind of thing. So why modernize? Because one of the reasons you might want to have a web version, and secondly is you might find it difficult these days to find staff that is familiar with Eclipse RCP. It's been around for a long time, right? And one thing we came across with clients is that third-party libraries for Java are simply running out of support, and there are no modern version for Java anymore. Also, new features like AI, like you've seen, or a mobile version of the service might be something you need. And generally, RCP has been around since 2004, and while it's still being maintained, there's a lack of innovation around the platform. So, what are the options? You can stay with RCP. That's always the zero option. You can go with that, or you can move to other desktop frameworks like UWP, MAUI, whatever. I'm not an expert in these. You could try and build a vanilla web application with something like React or any other framework, or you can use Theia as the basis of your application. There are a couple of things you'll have to do anyway. The first is you have to rewrite the UI because all those frameworks, they're not based on Java, so SWT is out of the question. There usually is, you need to extract the business logic that you have because you want the new app to do the same thing as the old app, right? So that also ties into the next point, that you have to migrate your testing somehow. Usually you have some tests that make sure that the application does what it wants, so you need to move that to a new system, typically web-based in the case of Theia. And you'll also have to deal with a new build system, obviously, and with a new language. So with modern app frameworks, one of the questions you have to ask, are they cross-platform? Because if you want to run your application on the three major platforms, you have to do that, right? But it has to give you that. There's usually no path to a web application. You're moving from one desktop framework to the second desktop framework. And the third thing is also the staffing might be difficult to find depending on the framework that you're using. If you go with a vanilla web app, one thing you lose is that you have no local access. So if you need to have access to the file system or to specialized hardware or integrate with the local system, you're going to lose that with a web app. There's also no offline version usually, which you can work around. And all the application services we're talking about, like views and perspectives management, etc., is not there. Web apps are usually single window. They call them single page apps for a reason. And there's also no runtime extensibility. And the ability to run multiple configurations is also not there out of the box. On the upside, the distribution is trivial. You just run a web server and you can easily find staff in local markets. And the application model is very well understood. So there's little to actually make up on the fly. If you go with Theia as a basis for your migration, you do have access to a local file system, be it on your local machine or on some server. There's online and offline versions of Theia, so you can do both. And a lot of application services are still there from RCP, like preferences like view management, their actions, there's dependency injection framework. You have AI now since last year. And also there's limited multi-window functionality. You can drag out views into a secondary window and put them on a different screen. And Theia is extensible at runtime as well. You can also have multiple applications, Theia applications, that use the same modules, and the build system is capable of building those different applications from the same source. And you can use a lot of the skills of web developers because Theia is based on web technologies. So a couple of obstacles you might find when you're migrating is that the viewer support is not as comfortable as it is in RCP, the table and tree views, but there's also libraries that in the web spaces can support you with that. And the view layout is different, and also perspectives and multi-window support is not as powerful as it is in Eclipse RCP. The plugin support, and that's an architectural problem I've been trying to solve for a long time. Just never had time. Pulls in basically the whole system. So if you're using the runtime extensibility, it will a lot of the things will automatically come into your product. And if you run the web version of Theia, the architecture we have is that there's one backend per user. So you need a system that runs those backends for you on the server. Luckily, there's an open source solution by the Eclipse source guys called Theia Cloud. But that solution, of course, does not scale to running something like Google, but for in-house applications, it's perfectly serviceable. So decision time. If you just the default should be that you go with a vanilla web app because it's the simplest model. You can easily staff your project with that. If you have a legacy project, let's say like 3 years, I would just stick with RCP and muddle through until you can retire the product. If you need local resource access like the workspace, then Theia is the obvious choice. Same if you use a lot of the existing services from Theia, views, menus, editors, preferences, etc. You'd have to build that from scratch otherwise. And also runtime extensibility is something that's not there in web applications. Also, the multi-window thing might point you to Theia, and if you need an installable application. So conclusions. Theia is for me the obvious choice if you want to modernize something, an IDE-like application that has workspace, views, editors, etc., like we've seen an hour ago in that talk. But if you just have a database front end app, basically, go with a vanilla web app. It's just simpler. But Theia might offer some services that might be worth the additional complexity you buy with it. And it can also be a stepping stone towards a web app because it's written, the UI is written in web technologies, so you can reuse that later if you are a bit smart about it. And that's it for me. Thanks. Are there any questions?
Thank you so much for that. Okay, let's have a quick little look here. So we have a question from Timur Mirza. Is there an equivalent to Eclipse P2 in Theia?
No, there is not, because or let's say it that way, it would be if you have runtime extensibility like P2, then that would be OpenVSX, like you use for VS Code extensions. But if you have compile time Theia extensions, then you have that in you control the whole application, right? So it's not just does not apply. It's Eclipse RCP is plugins all the way down, which is not the case for Theia. You have to design your API and you control the API.
Okay, great. Thank you for that answer.